Howdy folks, Little John out in the brewery. Brew day. Today I'm brewing up cherry pie stout. So finally getting around to brewing the cherry beer. And I've been talking about it probably since Christmas. The cherries in the freezer since then. And I was looking at doing a rebrew of the cherry ripe stout with a little bit of correction, but just in the last little week or so I've had a change of thought. So I'm going down the cherry pie avenue, so I'm going for a more a pastry stout type of effect than just the standard stout with the cherry additions of the cherry ripe stout. So I'm in the middle of weighing my grains. I've got the mash is on. I'm doing a 15 litre batch today, and I've got doing a full volume mash in the Brewzilla. There'll be a very small sparge at the end, but about 2 litres. But I've got the mash in and the pale malt is in there. Now you can just hear the Brewzilla kicking on now. The elements just kicked in. I've turned the, it's only sitting next to the camera, I've turned the pump off just at the moment. But we'll have a chat about that just a sec. Before that, shout out to all the Patreons for Little John. Guys, as always, cheers for your support. Patreon keeps the channel going, keeps me able to do other things that allows me to do experiments and play around and things like that. So those guys, thank you very much. If you're interested, hit the link down below, it's in the description. See what it's all about, might be for you. If you're not Patreon, whatever, if you're watching the channel and you like what's going on, hit the subscribe button, get subscribed, hit the like button as well. All these things help me out, keeps the channel going, keeps us doing things. Alright, got no beer at the moment, it's a little bit early, but I'll have a beer before the end of the video, don't you worry. So, as I said, I'm doing a 15 litre batch. I'm aiming for about a 7.2% finished brew. I'll be looking to probably keg about 9 litres and get maybe, somewhere between 8 and 12 bottles, stubbies out of this batch. So I haven't gone full volume because I've gone a little bit higher on the ABV in the grain bill, but a lot of that stuff's not going into the Brewzilla, and you'll find that out in a minute. But I just didn't really want 23 litres of this brew. So 15 litres sounds like a good number. It's easy to work with the Brewzilla. So, as I said, pale malt is in the Robo Brew, 20 litre mash in amount. I'm looking for probably a total of about 22 litres of mash and sparge water. That's just to remind me I've not put any additions into that water. I'll do that when I get off. When I finish here, I'll stick some additions in. Nothing chemicals and minerals. I've just totally forgot about them. Anyway, so I've got 3.4 kilos of Gladfield ale malt in there, mashing in. It's mashing at 65 degrees. There's also 225 grams of oats in there, just a quick oats porridge stuck in. That's now been mashing for half an hour, and I'm just sitting down to weigh up my dark malts, which I'm going to put in. Once I'm going to let this mash through 65. It's going to mash for an hour, and then I'm going to bring it up to 72 degrees. So about 10 minutes before the end of that mash, so about 20 minutes time, I'm going to add my dark grains in, because I don't want to extract too much harshness out of them. I just want the colour and some nice flavour, because I want, at the end of the day, for this beer, I want other things, namely the cherry and other additions, to shine. So we'll discuss them shortly. But just going to weigh these up while we go. So I've got, I'll do this in order just to keep myself under track. Chocolate malt. Oh, sorry. There's also 580 grams of Gladfield biscuit malt in the mash. Now the biscuit malt, I'm hoping will add hopefully some biscuity notes, some pastry type flavours. Hence the going with the theme with the cherry pie, looking for that pastry sort of effect. So I've got 200 grams of chocolate malt. In this case it's Joe Malt Joe White chocolate. 150 grams of Special B. Now this is just add a little bit of fruit. Just a little bit of I think maybe just a touch of dark fruits, and a little bit of caramel. And then we've got our roast barley. I'm going for 80 grams of roast barley, and obviously that's going to give us our roasty notes and our darkness. Like I said, not a huge amount. Again, it's not going to be. I don't want heaps of the tannin and that harshness of the roast. And that's it. That's going to go in about 20 minutes time. Okay. So that is the grains. Now the other additions that are going to go into this beer, obviously, going to be cherries. Can't have a cherry pie stout without cherries. So I've got 2 kilos of cherries there. They're in the freezer. They will get. They're not going to go in today. They're going to go into basically into secondary or late primary. I will ferment this for a couple of days. The main brew, probably 5 days, and then I'm going to transfer into I'm going to do one fermenter, probably in the all-rounder, and then go into another after 5 days once ferment is mostly done. And I'll be adding that wort onto the cherries. So I'm going to get the cherries, I'm going to cook them up. I'm not going to put them in the list. I'm going to cook them up a little bit, like you would be making a cherry pie, on the stove, in the stock pot, cook them up. To that I will add 200 grams of white sugar, which is going to give me a little bit of a boost in some alcohol. And add them in, then dump that primary onto that. So sit that in secondary for a little bit longer, and that's going to bring up obviously the cherries. Now, to counteract the tartness of the cherries, and also B, to help with the pastry sweetness of the pastry crust of the pie, I'm going to go for 200 grams of lactose, which will go in at the end of the boil. And I'm also going to go for about 10 millilitres of good quality vanilla extract. Now, I haven't located my bottle. I've got a bottle around somewhere. I haven't really had a good look. It wasn't in the cupboard inside, which means it's out here somewhere. But that will also go in at the end of ferment. So when I put the cherries in, the vanilla will go in with the cherries. So I will add some video of that when it happens. So that's going to be later in the week, probably one afternoon I'll do that. So that's where we're looking. So I'm going to flick the mash back on. I'll get a shot when we come back into the dark grains. And once the mash is finished and boils on, we'll come back and we'll have a chat about the hops that are going into this, and whatever, like at some point we'll natter about the yeast that's going on. So we'll continue on with what we're doing. Righto, we're 50 minutes in the mash. Now I'm cutting in these dark grains. Trying to get them into the bloody mash done. Now I've had the pump on and off during the mash. I've sort of had flow and no flow. It's been pretty slow, so I've run the pump for sort of 10 minutes, then off for 10, back on for 10, bit of a stir in between here and there. The mash is looking fairly open. It seems to be going alright, but yeah, it just doesn't want to flow fully. I did put 2 handfuls of rice hulls in as well, but wasn't really getting us anywhere, so that's all good. So I got all them dark grains in. Give that 10 minutes, then I'll ramp it up to 72 for a rest there, and we'll sort of mash out there and then do a sparge. Righto, coming towards the end of the mash, we've raised to 72. It's going to run for about another 15 minutes. So good time to weigh out the hops. So I don't want the hops to be a big player, but obviously they've got a role they need to do. So I'm looking for a decent amount of bitterness up front to hold against the grain without being overpowering. So I'm going for 14 grams of Warrior. So looking to be nice and clean. And that's going to give me about 32, 33 IBU, which I think is just going to be a really nice level to hold against everything and give us a good solid initial hit in the mouth, and then allow the rest of this beer to come through at the end. So our other hop addition, which will be a 10 minute, is going to be Columbus, and that's going to be 15 grams. Now, the 15 grams of Columbus is going to get us about 12 IBU, so it's a decent number. And it'll get us some nice fruit that will complement the cherry. Well, I'm hoping it will complement the cherry anyway. But I don't think it will fight against it. Much the same as the special B in the grains, is that little bit of dark fruit. The Columbus will do similar sort of things, just to roll along with the cherry, but also just to give the beer a little bit of its own, body and context towards the end of, late on the finish. The cherries can tend to be quite finished tartish. I have picked a different variety this year. I can't think of off the top of my head what they actually were. Look at that when we get there. But they're sweeter than I've used previously, so I'm hoping there's going to be a bit more sweetness and tartness. But just this extra little bit of fruit from the hops and from that special bee, I think will work nicely just to keep it in a nice area. That's what I'm hoping anyway. Whoever does it, I'm not, who knows. But so a total IBU of about 45, 46, which I think is going to be really nice. It's going to work good at this level. It's not ridiculous. So that's them. We'll get them in soon. Just waiting for this to finish the end of this mash, and we'll get the sparge on. Get up a boil, get these fellas in. Then it's going to be very close to time for a beer. Righto, that's mash done. Now, lift this fella so we can get the sparge underway. Now, that's a mostly full volume. I'm just running. Just bought a jug with about 1.5 litres of water in. I'm just going to pop that in the top. Gently. Let that go. I'm going to turn that a bit further before it falls off. That was only just on there. Okay, so I'm just going to let this drain, get this sparge done, get it come up to a boil. We'll sit down and we'll get a pre-boil volume, gravity, and we'll talk yeast. Rightio. We've progressed along. Boiler's finished. I've cooled. We're down to, currently it's on 29 degrees. I'm having trouble getting below that because with the lower volume I've only got about the last 3 coils on the chiller in the actual wort itself. So I'll turn the chiller off. It's got that sitting. I'll let this sit for about half an hour, let everything drop out, and I'll transfer into the all round and get it into the fridge. Now, hydrometer tells me we're at 1070. Adjusted, that comes out at 1072, which is about 10 points over where I want to be right about now. I'm aiming for 1070 as a starting gravity, and I've still got to add the cherries, and actually I didn't add the lactose in, so I've still got 200 grams of lactose and 200 grams of white sugar to go in, so I'm well above gravity, but I am down on volume. I'm probably going to get 12.5, 13 litres out of this into the fermenter. Numbers tell me that will get me back, with adding 2 litres will get me back to 1062, so around that 15 litre mark, which is more what I'm looking for. So I'm happy with that. So what that does mean effectively is that I've probably got, I'd allowed 65% efficiency, expecting to get a little bit lower with the lower volume because that's generally how things run. But I would imagine by the time if I stuck 200 grams of lactose into here, that I'm probably going to pop up to 1065, somewhere around there, even 1066, which means I'm probably hitting closer to that 70% mark. I'd have to actually run the numbers and see, but It does mean I've got the efficiencies coming pretty close to that target, but that's, I mean, that's just an adjustment you need to make when you're brewing at a slightly lower batch. So the little bit of mucking around with the mash and the not circulating particularly well hasn't had any negative effect, that's for sure. And it's possible the extra stirring has created a better result, but it's not. I mean, it's not a hell of a lot. It's pretty close by the time I adjust the volumes and stuff. So, but overall, I'm really happy with that where we're at. So, as I said, I will transfer this over to the all-rounder in about half an hour's time, once it's settled a little bit more. With a lower volume, I want the least amount of crud coming over into the fermenter as possible. All-rounder sitting here, she's got sanitizer in it, it's just draining at the moment. This will go into the fridge. I will top up, I said, with about 2 litres of water, or up to 15, so whatever it takes to get there. I will probably pull the lactose out and transfer that while I'm going, so it's in there initially, so I don't forget it later on, because it's not listed. It was meant to go in during the boil. I just sat down and done a live on Facebook while I was doing the boil, so I've got distracted and forgotten it at the end. So that's all good. I'm going to ferment with this fella, the Mangrove Jack's M42 New World Strong Ale. It's going to go just 1 packet. This is relatively high attenuation, high fluctuation, and high alcohol tolerance. So this may push things a little bit drier than I've possibly allowed for in my original calculations. So it's saying 77-82% attenuation, so if I get that with the numbers on the fruit that I'm expecting, and do start around that 1070 mark, then we are probably going to be looking at more likely to be getting close to 8% than the low 7, that 7 sort of 0.2 that I was looking for. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But that's it. 1 packet. I only got the 1 packet. I haven't got 2 packets of this. It's 15 litres. It's designed for high strength, and given that the initial wort is not particularly, it's a slightly higher gravity, but it is a lower volume. I think we'll be right, and it will build up good numbers before I pitch that. The cherries and the extra sugar, so it will be nice and grown by then to finish off. So I think the 1 packet in this case will be sufficient. It's probably, if we've done the numbers, it's probably a little on the low side, but it's not going to be a hell of a lot. I'm not too concerned. I'll get this up and rehydrating in a minute while I wait for this to settle. So we'll be all good. So that's where we're going. I'm fermenting at 18 degrees. Keep it nice and neutral. I don't want any. This is telling me it doesn't add any real yeast character, but I'll keep it. It says 16 to 22 is its ideal range, so we'll keep it down towards the lower end. Keep the yeast out of the equation. But I'll be back. So normally we can finish the video there, but no, I'm going to continue on. I'll continue on, and we'll add the cherries in a few days' time. Oh yeah. Okay, that's nice. Oh, look, I think that would be bloody absolutely delicious just on its own. But I think that's going to be a really nice base for this beer. So yeah, really happy with how we're progressing. So I'll see you shortly when we're getting the cherries on. Righto folks, we are 6 days into the ferment and I'm about to get the cherries organised and ready to go and get the wort transferred onto these. Now I had planned on doing this on day 5, but stuff around with work, I didn't have time yesterday, I finished later than was planned. So here we are, Friday afternoon, I've got the time to do it. So I had originally planned on doing this with fresh cherries. I've got 2 kilos of fresh cherries I bought back in cherry season from from the local grower here in the cherry capital. But they are off the vine, off the tree. They're not pitted, they've got seeds, and they've got stems on them. Which means ideally I'd be at least taking the stems off before I do anything with them. Previously I've thrown them in the boil and I haven't worried too much about it. I've just thrown them in as they are. And I had tossed up just throwing them into the secondary, just mushed them up a little bit with a with a bloody potato masher or something, and just throwing them in. But that meant throwing the stems and everything in, which I really wasn't wanting to do. And I thought about it, and I thought okay, I'm going to cook it. I want to sort of make a bit more of a puree to get in there, and particularly with the pie feel, I want to have more of that cooked cherry effect going on. So what I've done is I've bought 2 kilos of frozen cherries. So these are pitted, so it's just cherries, there's nothing else in there. And I'm going to cook these up. Now these are still frozen. I ideally should have got these out last night to get them thawed out. I wasn't sure whether I was going to get to this today or tomorrow. So anyway, so here we are. So I've just got my pot. Onto my little burner, just the just a 10 litre stock pot, which has gotten just a little bit too warm. So I'm going to take it off the heat while I get these cherries in. I'd also like to get them out of the packet if I could. So what the plan is now, I'm going to cook these down. So this will probably, I don't know, maybe about 15 minutes. Depends how quick I'm going to actually take some of the sort of for it. I was going to add, the original recipe I calculated 200 grams of sugar. I was tossing up either just plain white sugar or some dextrose. But thinking about it, I'm trying to get that pie crust sweetness going on. So I've decided I'm going to throw in 200 grams of brown sugar once these are sort of cooking a little bit, once they start to mush up. And I'll throw the brown sugar in. And that's going to give me a little bit of caramelisation. I think that's going to be potentially closer to the actual, that pie, pie pastry sort of a flavour. Okay, so I'm going to cook these down, and I'll add these into my second all-rounder, and I'll wrap onto this, and then allow the ferment to finish. So I'm going to cook these off a little bit. I'll come back once it's cooked a bit, have a look at what it looks like, and we'll get into the we'll get the ferment transfer happening. Okay, so cherries are starting to cook down. We've got everything's unfrozen. It's starting to get a little bit of mush in there. There's plenty of juice. So I'm just going to get my brown sugar weighed up and get that in. and get that mixing in. So I said 200 grams of the brown sugar, and according to Brewzilla, these cherries and the sugar should give me about 7 points of gravity added to the original wort. So calculate that back in. So I'll work that out. I'll give an updated number shortly. So I'll just mix that sugar in, make sure it's dissolved. I'm going to let this cook for probably just another couple of minutes, maybe another 2 or 3 minutes. Then I'm going to put this into the fridge, let it cool down before I transfer it over. Rightio. Cherries have cooled. I'd probably prefer they were a bit cooler, but they're not as hot as they were, and they will cool when the transfer comes in. Main concern is having this too hot and killing any yeast off, but we'll see as I'm going how I'm hoping to counteract that. So this is the current wort. I've just taken a hydro sample. It's sitting currently on about 1020. I'm watching here, it's got some light activity still going on. The yeast is still kicking along. Looking good. We're sitting on about a bit over 9 psi on there. So Fermzilla, all round. This is a new one, and now I'm really not happy. I can't find my strap for this. I've got me stuff where it is. I'm positive I bought one with this fella, and I don't know where it's gone. Which means this has the possibility of moving around. Put it upside down now. You're not going to see the bottom of this one due to the camera angle, but I've just turned the base up the other way. So normally I have this webbing strap on there, which means you can just lift by the handles, pick the whole thing up, pick the actual base up and move that into the fridge, because it's a bit difficult without. But given this is a smaller batch, and by the time I transfer this, I'm probably only going to have about 13 litres of liquid, about 15-16 litres total volume. I'll be able to just carry this, pick it up by hand, and put it on my seat and roll it over to the fridge without too much trouble, and hopefully not tip it over. So anyway, first thing I need to do, I need to get these cherries in. Now I want to do this without getting cherry juice all over me. And you can see there's a lot of juice here, which is good. This is what I want. And this is why, in the end, partly why I went to the frozen cherries, because I knew I was going to get more juice out of them. Because they've been pitted and de-stemmed, it means we're going to be able to get into the inside and get all that bloody lovely juice out. And that's really what I want. That's what I want to add the colour and the flavour to this brew. So that in. That's good. That's nice. Now I put the pressure lid in. Those. Stick him on. Get him screwed down. Now, before I go transferring, obviously we we want to do this without any oxygen getting in, because I haven't got enough yeast at the moment to scrub anything out of this brew. So I'm just going to send in some oxygen here. Oxygen, bloody hell. I'm going to send in some CO2 just to purge the oxygen out of the all-rounder. And this will mean I'll be able to transfer safely. No risk of oxidising the brew. No chance of wrecking anything. CO2 filling the headspace there, so I'm happy with that. Lovely. And we only get about 3, maybe a bit more PSI in there, but like I said, it's about making sure we've got a nice clean space to transfer to. So I've got, that's me sampling tube there at the moment. We'll get that off. Okay, I've got my transfer line. I pushed a little bit of this through it just before. It normally sits full of sanitizer, so it's just 2 beer disconnects on either end. We'll make our transfer, so I just want to pull as much pressure off that as I can. Now I'm going to transfer into here via the actual dip tube. So even though it's free of oxygen, it's sealed, it's closed, and there's no risk of, shouldn't be any risk of getting any oxygen in here. I don't want to splash it if I don't have to. So I'm going to go as far down into this fermenter as I can. Okay, she's transferring over there. Now, again, I don't think you're going to be able to see that just on camera at the moment. She's just siphoning in. And then, as I said, now what I want to do with the oxygen, bloody hell, I've got oxygen on the mind. Now, what I want to do with the yeast, because there's obviously still a little bit of activity, the yeast is still going, but there's not a real lot left in suspension. Most of it's, there's a fair whack dropped out, and I want to make sure I've got enough to kick back in to finish this off properly. So, my concern, as I said, was the temperature, because the cherries were still a bit warm. So I want to make sure that the wort that's over here isn't going to shock any yeast that I bring out of here. So the little bit that's coming in with the wort at the moment is only minimal. There's not going to be a lot of yeast there. Let's see what this is going on. So this is currently showing an air temperature in here of 24 degrees. This one's about 19. It was at 18 in the fridge. It's coming up just a little bit as it sat, but if I can get these two to equalise a little bit more, then what I'm going to do is just give this all-rounder just a bit of a shake, just to stir some of that yeast up off the bottom, and then allow that to transfer over into here. Now it's not going to be a lot, but it's just going to be, make sure there's enough to finish off that last little bit. There's only probably maybe 6 points of ferment left to happen in this fella, in the original wort. It's nearly done. So I haven't got a massive amount of work left to do, but it's going to have another 6 or 7, yeah, about another 7 points estimated in here. So once it's finished transferring, it's going to be about 13 points of gravity still to drop. That's a significant number, and I don't want to stress the yeast at this point. And this stuff in here is going to be nice and happy and healthy and really ready to sort of chew away. So I'll let this go. It's going to take a few more minutes. I'll come back and have a look once we're getting closer to the end. Okay. As we're getting through the transfer, and the pressure is dropping in the original fermenter, the yeast is starting to release from the bottom. It's becoming a lot more of it in the wort and in suspension. So that has reduced the need to do what I was going to do, and that was basically just give this, like I said, give this a bit of a swirl up. The new fella is slowly sneaking down to around 20 degrees. It's still not liquid, that's only the air temp, so it's getting close, but this is about the same. So they're pretty much neutralised just at the moment, equalised, so I'm pretty happy with that. And the biggest issue, and this is the issue I was always going to have with these, with the all-rounders, and this is why I've been looking at the fermenting in the kegs, is that it's hard to get all your liquid out of these with the dip tubes. They just don't get all the way to the bottom. You just can't do it. You have an amount of wastage, and it's, you know, somewhere in the vicinity of like a litre and a half, potentially even more, that you just cannot get out. You've got to lean these things over to be able to get the wort into the dip tube. Now I keep just pulling the pressure off on the receiving vessel to keep it below this fella, because as we're transferring, we're taking some pressure with us, so we need a lower pressure on the receiving side to allow our transfer to happen. And that's still looking fairly clean. There's a fair couple of on the yeast on the bottom there. No, a fair bit's actually got up in the suspension, so we should be pretty happy. Pretty good. I may need to get a little bit of gas on this, just get some pressure to get the last of this out. That's going to be pretty good. But I'll keep playing with this, and I'll come back once we're done and see what our final volume is, and wrap it up. Alright folks, transfer's done. Ended up at the 15 litre mark on the new fermenter. So we got a good whack out of this fella. There's not much left in there. I'd say, looking at it, there's definitely well under a litre of water there. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm expecting to pull 11, maybe 12 litres of fermented beer out at the end of the day, which I'd be happy with. 9 litre keg, and maybe 8 to 10 bottles on top. So just had a look back at the notes, just checking where we're at and updating the log, and I've just looked. I said 0.0. I said 7 points of gravity added for the cherries and the sugar. I didn't think it sounded quite right. When I've looked at the numbers, 9 points was the actual expected gravity increase. So that means our total starting gravity is somewhere around 1074. Give or take a point or two. At the end of the day, when we're probably talking a beer that's going to be in the 7.5 to 8% range. That's not going to really make too much difference. It's only going to be, you know, 0.2, 0.3% difference at the end of the day. So all is good. A nice little cherry colour on top, and transfer's gone good. So it's in the fridge, continuing at 17.8 degrees or 18 degrees for all intents and purposes. And that's where she'll stay. So it'll stay there now for probably another week before I look like getting it into a keg. It's going to depend whether I'm home next weekend or not. At the moment, that's debatable. So if I'm home next weekend, it will get kegged next weekend. If not next weekend, it'll be, yeah, early the week after. So and I'll probably give it, realistically, I'd probably give it about 4 weeks before I do an actual any sort of tasting on it officially on video. This is the, you know, the wort from out of the initial fermenter. Okay, it's got, that's nice. It's not too rich. It's not super dark. It's a little bit lighter than I actually sort of was expecting it to be. But as I said, I haven't pushed it very hard. So again, I've called it a cherry pie stout, and the reality is it's probably going to realistically probably fall into more that category of a cherry pie ale, just an ale, more of a dark ale sort of a thing than an actual stout. But we'll see where she finishes up. Once that cherry kicks in and that bit extra sugar in it now, we'll see where we go. I think we're going to end up with a much darker colour yet. That's not particularly roasted, but there is a little hint there. So yeah, we'll see how we finish up. Either way, we're going to get a cherry pie beer of some kind. So till then, as always, cheers everyone for watching. Thumbs up to all the Patreons. Your support is much appreciated, as always. Keeps the channel going. If you aren't subscribed to the Little Johns, hit the subscribe button down there. Hit the notification bell. Let you know anything's happening. If you're watching the video, hit the like button. Any questions, any comments on the beer, stick them down below. Let's have a conversation about it if we need to. Anyway, that's me. Done. Cherry pie ale has been cherry pied. So I'll see you in a few weeks' time when we're doing a tasting. So until then, when we're brewing beer, drinking beer, we're talking beer, good brewing.